Series 93-100, items 52 through 74. At the ordinary civilized level, part of neurons' responsibility vis-a-vis hormones is to make just everyday existence seem more complicated than it physically is. And what better description of civilization could you ask for? The king can execute you, but the priest can make you feel guilty. And the priest can make you feel guilty, but of what use is a thinker to the crowd? Partisan thought. 2-ply condoms for the mind. All men see clouds. The ordinary see them as either natural phenomena or in times of calm, metaphors. While thinkers see them as both, all the time, simultaneously. Until you can think afresh for yourself, you really have no idea just how boring ordinary explanations of life actually are. Oh, sure, some of you probably suspect it, but I'm not supposed to make editorial comments in the middle of this. All right, I'll remember. If the hormonal life of mankind is like a gigantic armada of cruisers, battleships, and destroyers, then his neural life is one, then his neural one is like a, good God. Who wrote this? Oh. If the hormonal life of mankind is like a gigantic armada of cruisers, battleships, and destroyers, then his neural one is like a fleet of submarines. Or you could see this the other way around. Serious discussions about everyday affairs equals debates over mirages. A civilized man without ritual and mental habit is like a racing ship without a keel. Or else maybe like a potential thinker, maybe. The simple are always in the midst of some explanation or the other. When originality is your navigator, creativity your skipper, and your mind your berth, then you need not give anyone else a wide one. Thinking that doesn't constantly renew itself is not real thinking. A neural sailor's law of the intellectual sea. When your latest dinghy becomes large enough to be a cruise ship, abandon it. To live your private life in public is to spill your guts, and to spill your guts is to eventually have no guts. Let me tell you what happened. Oh, well. God, it was. Well, I don't bother you. Thinkers in the city, thinkers on the farm. When eagles debate pigs, neither flies. Note, in this regards, pigs don't know, so pigs don't care. What could be more pleasurable to the blind than to see, and to a thinker than to think more? Plagiarists never get it right. While the mind has nothing to truly fear, it remains the seat of man's greatest fears. Trouble in Paradise, a poem. I just read them. Before man, there was no paradise. After him, trouble. If you do it right, nobody really cares what a thinker does. Help, cried a man's mind. I'm the victim of a drive-by shooting. And the license plate on the car said, the public. Some shouting news. A man with something truly to shout about doesn't shout. In neural endeavor, self-reference is always a form of self-destruction. Humility for monks, silence for thinkers. stress, giving civilization the bad rap. Series 93, 110. Items 1 through the end. Glasses help sight, aids hearing, even practice thinking. But what encourages consciousness? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's not anything you ever think about. Well, just thanks, bunches. I'm out on a limb, out here with him. Thusly did one man analyze his relationship to his mind. If everyone went crazy who once believed that they might, we'd all be crazy. Out on a limb, huh? Only creatures who have a voice hear voices. Part 2. Only creatures who have a mind, you fill in the rest. A man thought, I do not understand the difference between this and that. Then further thought, and it must be because there is none. An asphyxiating dinghy is an asphyxiating dinghy whether it's floating or not. Your mama wouldn't lie to you, but your genes would. Your genes wouldn't lie to you, but your mama would. Take your choice, but don't meow or chirp. One man made up reality to such a point that it became his own ritualistic reality. Way to go, man. The secret word for the night is a silent camera. At times when he obviously didn't know what he was doing, one man would say to himself, maybe you had a mini stroke. Perhaps you have a tumor. Or it could be that all is as it should be, and you just ought to quit talking to yourself. Bacteriologist Bonage. Dr. Petrie gazed at his reflection in the dish and cooed. After they made the mold, they, for some reason, threw you in with the deal. I like your taste. That is your intelligence. Myths. Well, that's a hard word to get over from a stage. Myths. M-Y-T-H-S. Distractions to keep kids from fretting over having lost the bus schedule. Hey, maybe they ate it. And on the 8th day, just before he was going to take a short break, fate made ellipses and parentheses, who later went on to capture the mixed doubles crown. Oh, miss. Where is thy sting? Now that the sting has been removed. But several people opine that such an action was not perhaps necessarily salubrious. O people, O ye several people, wherefore aren't thy sting? Everywhere, master, everywhere. Yet one more reason, they will not allow children on spacecraft nor rockets inside of adults. Many people have the belief that before they came here, they were some sort of important person. Still another reason that men are permitted to have beliefs and are, nay, made to have them. By having an intellect, a creature can, through reading travel brochures, experience some migratory thrills without ever having gone anywhere. The fuse unverbalized historic cry. I want to be like I was before I was. But not exactly, but not exactly not. One man's job was to put words and ideas into everyone else's locker. Those who know what they're doing may have left already. What's secretly funny at academia's unrecognized expense is that everyone is a graduate of the same school. And a gentleman asked, don't you mean is ultimately a graduate of the same school? And that, good students, is the type of question exemplary of those who are born of Mother Time. And it later inquires, don't you mean to say is illegitimately born of Mother Time? Classmates, no doubt. And I rest my case. Did you write down page 13 for correction? There is no such thing as thinking. And what normally passes for it sure ain't it. We can play with our sex. We can play with our food. We can play with our mind. Will it do any good? The preceding verse was brought to you by the You, Me, and Why Semi-Charitable Trust. By unconscious accident, I might add. And now a little quiz for the kiddies, and with prizes appropriate there too. What's a bigger waste of time than being civilized? Thinking about it. And if any of you adults want to play along for the term being civilized, use instead either the words art or being alive. No one's map perfectly matches reality. Inside of every solar system is a place where all of their local words are produced. And inside this area are always a few people, sort of genetic side effects of the overall effort. And a man mused, is trying to be more human a form of science fiction or vice versa? Yes, you can call it anything you want to, but that's still what it is, attempting to be more human. One man wanted to go to a certain place, but since he couldn't seem to get there, he just thought about it a lot, and that seemed to keep him from worrying about it too much. And that, info lovers, is being human, not more human. One man's rhyme. I passed my days in a maze. One man's rhyme. I passed my days in a daze, then discovered my way in a maze. Simply being alive is not pressure and confusion enough. The war is over only when you don't hear it anymore. You can separate things, you can put them together. You can make things worse, but not any better. Thus is one generation's verse to the succeeding one. The shit is past only when you hear it no more. Any idea that a definition can help is an idea that is beyond help. There is nothing absolute that you can say about the mind, while there is about consciousness. And a man asked his mind, why must we continue to talk of the past? And it replied, but what else do we know? According to the mythical wisdom of this one planet, the physical laws of the universe are only there so that man will have something besides animals to use in metaphors. Men with mirrors will talk only about themselves until a hippo walks behind them. More intergalactic dialogue. Hey, Hella Theo, what the hell was that? What? Say, you're not Hella Theo. And now for some earthbound conversation. I say, I seem a bit confused, upset. Did you say a bit? Yes, a bit. Hey, you're not human. A certain thinker was once accused of not being sincere in his periodic emotional displays of friendship, and he replied, that's correct, but I'm also not insincere. Now the question is, do you get it? See, here's how the tune goes. Life makes sense. It's man who can't make sense out of life. The street corner commentator declared, if fate had wanted us to be any different than we are, she'd have made us different. And a man stopped and said, but she did make me different from you, and received the reply, well, there you are. And the man went on down to the bakery as he had originally planned. Human institutions, full punchlines in search of outdated setups. Give me 2 muffins and a Bismarck. A truly energy-saving tip that almost no human will ever use. Thinking about anything that anyone else has already thought about is worse than a waste of time. It is a hypnotic glue. Just as the cattle police were prepared to storm the building, a voice from within shouted, I'm warning you, I'm in a trance and I know how to use it. Don't we all, Elsie? Don't we all? Dialogus determinus. One man found that while on drugs, he was more like himself than otherwise. May I ask a question? Do you mean drugs ingested or drugs he neurally produced himself? Damn good question. Where was I? Maps. Maps of reality may not be perfect or even accurate, but they are, by God, comfortable maps. One man said, tell me what you don't understand and I'll tell you who you are, and replied, well, I don't understand anything. Then said, ha, I'd know you anywhere. If genes are your reading light, the past is always looking over your shoulder. Has talking to others ever led you astray? No. Then to whom? I was going to wait a minute or so. To be conscious in a new way, you must become privately passionate about your thinking. Men invented the different time zones to help account for his diversity of development. It was only later that the Dents began to believe that it had something to do with naval navigation. And a rabbi and a big game hunter said, we knew that. Shipbuilder's tip. Remember, if it won't float, it can always be turned into an institution. Hey, how do you think that Noah and neo-neural geology got so popular? Act 3, Scene 3. Well, if thinking alone won't take me where I want to go, then what will? Do you know exactly where it is that you're wanting to go? Well, no. Then what the hell kind of question is that? Well, it's my question. Have you got a better one? Hey, cut, hold it. Where's the director? Where's my agent? Who do you have to sleep with around here to get out of this production? That's a pretty old joke. This is a pretty old play. Yeah, you got me there. So maybe we should just stop and think about all of this, except for my original question about whether thinking alone will ever take us anywhere. Oh, Mr. Propman, yoo-hoo, would you please get my agent on the phone? Once in a drama, my role diverged, and I tried the one less traveled by. And that decision has, to say the fucking least, made all the difference you could ever imagine, baby. A thinker with a fear always has a friend. If this seems too weird for you, consider this. A thinker without a constant personal fear of some sort is sorely lacking. Being able to produce your own original material has to do with awareness, not daydreaming, study, or planning. What hungry, anxious men seek is not what they initially believe they seek. The above item was a two-parter. This instant comment making it a threer, and thus a liar of us all, as always. Ask not what words can do for you, but what consciousness can do with words. One man paused and reflected on his own neural signals. I am in constant worldwide communication with myself, even when I don't care to be. It is truly uncivilized to say aloud that cats run birds. When maps become snares, they're called institutions. They rub so many oils, salves, and ointments on one dead body that it looked almost lifelike again. Guess what they called it? All maps finally melt, but not fast enough for some. Anyone can act civilized, but only the individual can be personally civilized. One man thought, if I'm so smart, then why can't I be all the time the way I am some of the time and want to be all of the time? Then further thought, because smartness has so little to do with it. Another man thought, if I'm so pushy, then why can't I be all the time the way I am some of the time and want to be all the time? And further thought, because aggression has so little to do with it. And still another man thought, if I'm so spiritual, then why can't I be all the time the way I am some of the time and want to be all the time? And further thought, I guess because you know what has so little to do with it. And wouldn't you know it, a fourth man heard all of this and said to himself, if so many things have so little to actually do with it, then why are we staying around here yakking about it? A chap apparently uninvolved in the above told the clerk, I believe I'll have a Danish plane, if you please. Okay, travelers. What's the sense in thinking about Paris when you haven't even reached France yet? Okay, travelers, back to sleep. One day, while thinking about stuff, a man said to himself, perhaps the easiest way to do this is simply don't criticize anybody, even mentally. And one of his thoughts responded, why don't you just shut up? The ends do not have to justify the means or anything else. The ends must simply identify themselves. No matter your art, if your work is not surprising, it's not fully entertaining. There are no such things as missions. The only ones that actually exist are secret missions. The only answers that mean anything are those to questions that have never been asked. One man declared, subconsciously, I am more intelligent than I appear. Then added, I must be. We all must. Every man's life is his own, unless he looks abroad, consumes history, perceives the political intrigues of prairie dog nations. Conversational fragments continue also. Which is the more obscene, discussing the intricate intimacies of your sex life or of your mental processes? And I'm sorry, but I couldn't make out the second voice's reply. Always. An explanatory poem in 6 words. Always. A partisan's views only partially true. To be more alive, human, and conscious, you've got to be able to dance only with yourself and no one else be aware of it. And oh yeah, do it with no audible music. One man thought, God, I'm happy whenever I'm not either happy or not. The consciousness native to the collective is like an individual state of stupor. Here's a little something you might can use. One way to be smarter than everyone else is to be dumber than everyone else, but, and here's the most important part, you can't tell anyone. One guy's secret cry, I am a radio station, out of control. Article from the Real Warrior's Handbook of Honorable Conduct. If you're alive and ordinary, you're collaborating with the enemy. Big game hunter's tip. Even a hippo sufficiently plagiarized will finally fall. This is the only kind of trip where you're suddenly there and then you're suddenly not. See, here's the deal. If life can keep you critical, it can keep you in line. See, here's the real deal. If life can keep you thinking, it can keep you in line. Okay, the real double deal. If life keeps you alive, you'll stay in line. Authors, Truth in Advertising footnote. Those determined to be more alive and human won't accept any of this. So, suddenly you're there and then you're not. Good talk is good music. Upon hearing this last item, a man wanted to inquire, would it not be more literarily kosher to have said that good talk is like good music? But you should note that oftentimes all that stands between plain thought and point-blank talk is similes or metaphors or some other words. Man is the only creature who can be functionally catatonic with no feline influences. Hey, no offense to all you other guys, but to a thinker, nothing is ever as entertaining and informative as his own awareness. Plus, you don't have to stand in line or buy tickets or ask other people in the place to shut up. I ask you not to do editorials. All right. One man, long involved with trying to escape the gravity of the collective condition, finally came up short and said, the trouble with man is that he is too serious. And the trouble with people like us is that we're even more too serious. This gave him such a jolt that he had to begin the countdown all over again. Okay, McNeil, grab the wheel. I'm going to lay on you the final deal. You can be happy or not as dictated by emotions, or you can struggle to bring consciousness under extraordinary, unnecessary control. What a chance. What an offer. Your trade-in's worth more than you thought. Glasses help sight, aids hearing, even practice thinking. What then encourages consciousness? And I'll give you a hint. It's not anything you ever think about. Well, I'm like most of you. I enjoy non sequiturs. I enjoy hearing the impossible described in what would even pass, I guess, at the 10th grade to being a literate sentence. All this is always the same thing. Still talking about the only aspect of human life that distinguishes people from non-people. The brain. An ordinarily operating brain. And an aspect that is never taken into consideration except under pathological conditions, or at best theoretical conditions, dealing with statistics rather than direct observation of the one doing the study of himself, is that the mind, the brain itself, forget the mind for a second because they still want to do out-of-date dances with that. You mean the brain or the mind? Well, which one do you want? Well, I don't know. I ask you first. I'm the guy with the credentials. Which one are you talking about? That's why, sir, I said we'd drop that or bypass it for the moment. The brain itself, as functioning in man, brings in, without any doubt, what I used to try to describe to you as being a third possibility or a third kind of circuit. It being inseparable from the rest, but as man's brain, as it sprang from the brainstem into what is laughingly known as the cerebral cortex in man, that which thinks, can abstractly remember, and can speak. When it moved from that which we have in common with the other creatures, it did not just spring into the intellect. It did not just go from a non-speaking, non-thinking mammal into a thinking mammal. And even if it did, so what? There is that which seems to be a bridge, and it's that bridge that I keep dragging out in all sorts of ways and calling it civilization and the collective intelligence. But in one way, it can also be described as human emotions. And human emotions differ from all other passions on this planet. Should we all lay our heads on our desk and think, well, how? If that's true, then how? Well, think about all the ones we have in common. All the passions that you have in common with a dog, a cat, an orangutan, any animal. And then think about those that you apparently do not have in common by conventional wisdom. Is everybody thinking? Charity, love. I mean, mooses and moosettes will rut. But you don't ever see a moose shopping for a Valentine card. But charity, love, and in times past, they would love to run up the banner of, well, religion, spirituality, that's one of the things that absolutely distinguishes man. Pick out any of them. What have they accomplished for you? What purpose do they serve with man? The passions that you, and I'm using now, I assume you catch, passion and emotion, as though they were almost synonymous, while trying to infer with you with a wink and a nod and a scratching like low and inside. Or, take the next one for you, base. Inferring that even though they might appear to be synonymous, they might not be. But think about the ones that we do apparently have in common, the very things that would seem to be activities based upon passions, feelings, sensations that are not conducive to civilization. All forms of aggression, desires to take that which is not yours, unlawful behavior, if not immoral behavior. But you also understand that that is at the heart of survival, that if we were back to being a non-brain-driven mammal, then you would need that kind of aggression that is now immoral, illegal. You would need it like you never needed anything. That you would need the ability to turn upon your fellow man. And if he's one step ahead of you for that kumquat laying there, is to kill the motherfucker. Hurt him bad. You got mouths to feed. That is the kind of passion that is now, as it should be, considered to be unacceptable, because it would rent the fabric, the beautiful fabric, the shiny fabric, the very expensive fabric that we call civilization, that we call our senior prom evening gown. I don't know what you called yours, but That's what it was civilization. You would need that, but now you need it in such small doses, apparently, that it is considered to be illegal, it's considered to be immoral, and then oftentimes rendered to be absolutely illegal. So then what's left? The ones that man considers to be unique to him. The ones that I just pulled out several. Charity, love, spirituality. But what purpose do they serve? Well, they serve one purpose as being camouflaged, but they also serve a basis as being a bridge. It is a bridge without that kind of apparent, quote, human emotion, without which we could not think. We would not have the time to think. We would not have the room to think. The topography of humans being together would not allow us to think. Because even if behavior had been affected through external restraints such as the law, you still could not turn your back on anyone. It would be too iffy. Now, I know some of you people who may live in the Bronx consider it iffy now, but it would be seriously iffy, and not just physically anymore. What would seem to be the emotions was stuck down in one of the items tonight that said if you were ever going to be more conscious, there's a certain way in which you've got to be passionate about your own thinking. How in the hell can you be passionate about thinking? If we take the ordinary definitions, if not the the definitions. You can stand definitions. It's only people that say, well, throw a little branch water in my Jack Daniels. It's only them that need connotations. And I can tell you guys are grown. Most of you got livers that are half petrified anyway. So, definition. That they would seem to be not necessarily antithetical, but two different classes. That those who are apparently driven more at the ordinary level by the intellect will in fact have much negative to say about those who are inclined to pursue or to follow their own emotional desires. They would seem to be absolutely two different things. With ordinary people, they are. And if you consider that the mind is only how it operates now, if you consider, to press on with linguistics, if you consider the mind, if you consider that thinking and consciousness are the same thing, then you would be within your rights to consider that emotions and thinking are two different things. And in fact, never meet. They meet in such a degree that every time the brain does think, it has jumped a certain kind of bridge, it has passed through a part of a circuitry that is human emotions. The closest ones that you could ascertain, I just take your word for it, you don't have to be mystical, but any emotion that you would reasonably conclude to be singularly human, then it goes through a little side circuit somewhere, that it goes from being physical, non-thinking, it goes through a singular circuit somewhere, and I say singular in the collective sense of man, before it turns into thought. So every time you think, you have just momentarily before been emotional. Dr. reminded everyone about all of the beautiful birds who sing, who write, who are the spokesman for civilization. And yet you get down beneath their fine little feathers and you find what? You find a cat's claw. Jim Henson's not dead, he's only a purring. Every time a person has a thought, every time the brain fires, the electrochemical energy that's in operation has gone through, to some degree, an emotional stage from a passionate stage. It has gone from a baboon passion, if I'm making it too muddy, it's gone from a baboon passion. You're about to wonder, where's the far end of the universe? Right before that, there was a baboon passion, it ran through human emotion, and then that came out. I do not have the time to explain how that might happen. I mean, based on my example. Thank God. There is no such thing as thought without emotion. There's certainly no such thing as thought without passion. But there's no, and I could get people to go along with that. I could get ordinary minds to go, well, all you're saying is you got to be alive to think. Yep. Of course, they wouldn't hear what they said because I've already written news stories like that. You remember? And they go, well, that's all you're saying. You're saying if the body is alive and healthy enough for the brain to fire up. That's all you're saying. Okay. But it's more. Not just the passions of the body. It is also that they had to be, and it's certainly not within the awareness of men ordinarily. It's not even within their ability ordinarily to hear it pointed out. That it has to go from that kind of passion of simply being alive. It has to go from that and it has to be filtered through human emotion. And it doesn't matter the smallest amount, the teeniest bit, the world's shortest circuit, that it jumps from the older circuits through that one, just the smallest possible you can imagine. And that turns into thought. What is lacking when you try to break loose from what it is you're trying to do, if it's something beyond trying to stop smoking or playing with yourself or getting, if it's something worthwhile, it's something transcendental, something extraordinary. What is it you're trying to do? As all of you know by now, the easy, the childish way, and I say childish in a positive sense, in that you try it and it requires no effort, and therefore you can't demand your money back or get disappointed, is to think that it has to do with behavior. That is, back to the chimpanzee, the orangutan level. That if I affect behavior, if I undertake some kind of ritualistic behavior, it will change me. And anyone who has any ability to think past where the circuits ended up 2 or 3 generations ago, well, as you remember, it was the same time that they incorporated Radio Shack. But if you can think anywhere past that, then you know that is not beneficial. It does nothing to anyone who has any ability to live past today. So then what are you left with? And for thousands of years, on and off, we've had people say, well, that's true. On their own, they had already decided in some way that just changing behavior, just trying to change behavior, is not going to have that much effect, if any. So then they decide that they are involved with something of a much deeper, more complex, more mystical, usually, if not even in a religious sense, but simply a non-material basis. And they get into such ideas as meditating, chanting, attempting to remember one of the million names of fate each and every second of their life. That, if you try it, if you try anything, like, well, I will try and just remember the word fate. Every 3 seconds, I'm just going to try and remember the word faith. What you're dealing with, the fact, is you're already thinking. Your mind is the one that came up with that, or read it somewhere and said, I like that. It smells right. But your mind, at that basis, to refer back to another one tonight, the consciousness of collective man at every time, every place, the collective consciousness, the best that the collective has to offer, is individually a state of stupor. Which, at times I've seen people get some glimpse of this. As always, it seems to be a double-edged cigar. Some people seem very agitated when I can see them get a glimpse of it, and other people go, well, that explains it. That explains how life can operate. And I have had, I'm speaking for somebody, they say, and I have had this growing awareness that I have almost no personal awareness, and yet look at me. I'm the head of a corporation, I'm a federal judge, I'm a congressman, I'm a brain surgeon, and I actually, you're right, I'm just kind of in a state of stupor. But the latter group that I was saying, not the ones that get disturbed, the latter group goes, huh, because they realize that is the nature of the world. That is collective consciousness. It's not amazing that you can have a success rate of doing neural surgery like that. You've had a success rate of 84% or whatever the going average is. and that you make fairly good investments. You got, a wife on each coast and 14 mistresses. You keep them all juggled around. Nobody knows. You get your car back and forth and take a few drugs and you don't get put in jail. And yet, as you said, you periodically get the distinct impression, that's a bit of understatement, that you're actually just in a state of stupor. But hey, it's not just you. And that's the latter group that I said is one end of a double-barrel cigar, and they go, wow. Which, after that, there's a whole bunch that comes after a while, but save that for the next Independence Day. So, people try and do things that would appear to be beyond the ordinary ritualistic, materialistic, physical attempt to change themselves. Dancing, whirling, bowing down, lighting candles, crawling up and down stairs on their knees with broken glass thrown in front of them, staying on their head forever, fasting, overeating, drugs, and then the cessation of drugs. Beyond that, when they, as it would be, by any sequential view, would appear to be some form of progress, they try to do something that would seem to be more intellectual, that would seem to be more human. They used to call it more spiritual. That they attempt to do something such as chanting in their brain, or to meditate on something, try and picture the center of the universe and to hold it there all day. What are they doing? What have they always been doing? What are they doing now? People sitting down trying to meditate, businessmen, whatever the latest things are. They're all the same thing. I'm going to give you a new description. They're attempting to take that small, I'm talking about very small, emotional bridge that's between our older systems and man's intellect, his singular organ and ability. The one thing that makes it possible, that bridge over which every thought must pass, they're attempting to take that bridge and turn the bridge into something way beyond a bridge. It is to turn their own thinking into a kind of passionate activity. That's what has always been lacking. I say always been lacking. It's not like that I'm here to point out and everybody go, well, then tell us what to do. And I say, well, okay, put an aspirin in a 7-Up and shake it up and drink it and then you can do it. At least it won't make, at least it'll keep you from getting pregnant. Maybe it won't. May I remind you, this is not medical advice, so. All of you that later hear the pitter-patter of little feet around your condo, don't have your attorney call me. It's not my fault. When I'm saying what is lacking, you understand you can have passionate people. Let's make it good and simple. You can have passionate people out pursuing, let us say, some rather, as it's called, fundamentalist religion. Good physical people, any place on the planet, any religion. And they're down there singing, they got music, and they're hooping and hollering, and dancing around perhaps, or falling on the floor, and foaming at the mouth. It's all physical. It's a hobby like anything else, but it's physical. And they can say, and it can fulfill their need. They can say, well, this, the guides my spirituality, my hunger, my fear of death. The closer you are to the mammogram level, don't worry about that one. I was going to make that worse. The closer you are to the baboon level, the less hunger you have, the less need you have. So it is getting fulfilled, or they wouldn't be doing it. They enjoy it. You're an idiot to find any fault with it. But if it gets past that point, all you got is always in a binary-driven, partisan world, you have to go to the other extreme. I know there's stuff that muddles around the middle, but nobody finds anything. They don't even find any temporary. They don't find any apparent satisfaction. It's always a matter of flux. Or they think, well, I'm in a matter of transition. I grew up as a Southern Baptist, and now what I want to be is a Unitarian. But boy, it takes a lot. I miss all the dancing and the hollering, and they say you can drink. And that took part of the fun out. That sort of thing. So you have to go from a very conservative, very physically driven, very reptilian. There was a joke in there about mammogram, but I see it didn't go anywhere. You have to jump from that extreme into people apparently sitting still. And perhaps even trying to lead an ascetic life, but they're sitting there and they're meditating. And they're trying to think in a certain way. They're trying to bring the mind under control, or to use the classic Zen stories and examples, they're trying to take the disturbance of the mind and to still it. Which certainly you would not think, and they would agree, or say so right out. That sort of attempt would not be in any way encouraged or helped by the kind of behavior of the Southern Baptists, or whirling dervishes, or anybody involved with something that was feeding more directly the older circuits of man. Whether they made an attack on it, they would just simply say, well, some people seem to enjoy that kind of ritualistic physical behavior, falling down the floor and screaming or dancing and playing loud music. But they would say, look at us, this is the other extreme. We're walking a different path. They're separate, no music, no nothing. They're sitting there in a cold room trying to control this, they say, the mind. The point is, we will assume that anyone that got this far is either tried or you do understand, you can feel it, that neither one of those have ever and will not give some people the final what is lacking? What is missing? Well, the first group, as I said, is really in the past. That's a hobby. If anybody felt the need for that, you can get that by just going out and dancing all night. And that's it. You get to the other end, is sequentially, at the ordinary level, where man is headed. Always has been. It's always a drive up this way in the nervous system. But the people here, sitting and meditating, those who would separate through practice and even in theory, in their philosophy, in their map, they separate the kinds of things that more physically oriented people would attempt to do to enrich themselves spiritually, as they would call it. Then those sitting, trying to feed the mind more directly, they do not find satisfaction. They never get it. What is lacking? What is lacking is what I was describing in a slightly different way tonight, is the passion that takes you from the Southern Baptist, the holy roller somewhere, the fundamentalist Muslim, doing something physically, the whirling dervish, all the way to a Zen, or modern day would-be Manhattan, Wall Street broker Zen on his lunch hour, sitting there trying to calm himself, trying to focus his mind. And he may enjoy it. I understand the basis of it. And we all know, surely by now, what they're after. But going from there, the physical, the whirling dervish, the fundamentalists handling snakes and playing a bass drum and a fife in Appalachia, going from there to this guy on Wall Street, or sitting in a Zen monastery, and sitting there calm for years, attempting to do something internally. But he's physically calm, and he's trying to transpose the calmness here. Why the difficulty? Why can't you go from one to the other? They don't realize what's in between. The guy on this end will in fact denounce, if I start talking to emotions and passions to this guy, to the would-be Zenist, to somebody meditating. Just the words, if I start talking about passion and emotion, they go, well, wait a minute, you got the wrong guy for this. You ought to go back over there and talk to them. And if I went and talked to them and I started talking about emotion or passion, they would, quit dancing right quick and grab me and go, hey, come on in. You're in the right place. No, wait a minute. No, it's a different kind of emotion. Hey, bring it on in. We like it. Hey, got a guy with new emotion. Come on, kick it off. What key is it? It's not that passion. Nothing wrong with it. And it's not this attempt to sit there and still the mind. Nothing wrong with that. They're both hobbies. But what's missing in between, what they do not see, is that there is the emotion that is singular to man that really does not rest there and does not rest here. It is indeed, I hate to say bridge. No, you don't. Okay, bridge. I could have said something else, but we're not architectural students. Few engineers, but the last time I tried to use that, and I complimented somebody that I understood they were, I was inferring MIT or Georgia Tech and said something about engineers. Somebody went, yeah, woo, woo. And I thought, well. So, how about a neural nexus? But it is literally a bridge. But it's so short, it is so slippery, that you notice we have the name of emotion, but people can't even agree what it is. People agree what the body is, they'll agree what the brain is, and you start talking about emotions, and men will not agree. Psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, no one will agree on emotions. Why? It's too slippery. It seems to be beyond definition. It will not fit into any category as easily as talking about the mind. Well, the classic thing, the mind/body question. Which is a variation of, are the birds or the cats running us? Is it environment or genetics? But I know they think it's different. Like, well, is man his mind or his body? And they think it's something brand new, or some people do now. Wow, what if the mind can affect one's health? And then somebody else every now and then goes, wait a minute. What if one's health can affect the mind? And everyone says, wait a minute, one thing at a time. We're just humans. All I got's a brain. I can't deal with both of that. And then some guy wonders, wait a minute. I worked all these years coming up with suddenly almost a theory. And I've got, credentials. I got a degree on the wall, so a theory means something. It's not like some guy on the corner, for those of you who didn't like it, about the street corner commentator that was interrupted by a passing doctor of philosophy. Said, hey, it's easy for you to tell the truth. You don't have a reputation to protect. A guy's got credentials. He says, I don't, my theories mean something. And he said, I took all this time to come up with a theory. Mine may mean something. Remember the diplomas, that the mind may be able to affect health. And that guy across the hall said, wait a minute, health may be able to affect the mind. And there you are. The reason you don't ever hear, I'm going to stop. Have we got even a second? Oh. 2 minutes? Okay. You never hear. It's always the mind/body question or problem. You never hear the mind-emotion question. You never hear the body-emotion question. You never hear the mind/emotion/body question. Why? And a man says, well, I don't know. Well, what's all these dramatics for? I mean, if there's any kind of information that can be intellectually, directly conveyed, why the hell wouldn't I just sit here, if somebody show up, and just sit here in a monotone, or just write it down and hand it out? Because somebody has to replay the past for you. Somebody has to jump the bridge and then drag it out. Drag it out. Make it seem wider than it normally is. If you do not get passionate, I've been calling it thinking, and it's not actually thinking, but we'll get to that. I keep changing what you call one end of the bridge from the other. Now we got rid of those damn Romans and get them off the bridge. We can call it different things. But you're not going to change what you are if you're really trying to change what you are internally, consciously, until you can change, until you can produce a kind of passion about thinking. Your thinking, not somebody else's thinking. Not being passionate that somebody else's thinking sucks and that they're nuts. Passionate about your thinking. That meant good night. No. To you holy rollers. Or to you snake handlers. There's good night. No, I guess good night is, God damn, the son of a bitch bit me. That's good night.